They tell us the ancient gods are dead, that they faded with time. That belief starved them. That science replaced them. That is the first lie. Gods do not die the way men do. They do not rot in graves or vanish into dust. When a god disappears, it is never death. It is retreat. Long before churches, before books, before language had rules, humanity knew something watched from the dark. Not angels, not demons, older things. The first gods were not kind. They did not love humanity. They tolerated us. We built temples not out of faith but fear. We gave offerings not out of devotion but survival. And when the gods accepted those offerings, the world stayed intact. But then something changed. Humans grew bold. We stopped whispering their names. We buried their idols. We called them myths. And when the prayers stopped, the gods did not rage. They went silent. History tells you this was their end. That forgotten gods lose power. That belief is their blood. That is the second lie. There are ancient carvings older than civilization itself that show gods sleeping, not dying. Bound beneath stone, drowned beneath oceans, hidden inside forests that humans fear without knowing why. The ancients understood something we forgot. Some beings grow more dangerous when ignored, because silence gives them time. Even now, traces of them remain. In nightmares shared by strangers who've never met. In ruins too old to explain. In places where compasses fail and animals refuse to enter. And always, in the feeling that you are being watched when no one is there. You felt it before. Late at night. When the house is quiet. When your phone screen goes dark and the room suddenly feels crowded. That is not imagination. That is memory. Because the gods we call ancient are not gone. They are still alive. And they are listening. The first signs were not disasters. They were quieter than that. So small they were easy to dismiss. It began with dreams. Across different countries, different cultures. People started dreaming the same images. A vast shape standing behind the sky. A stone face buried in earth, breathing. A name spoken in a language no one remembered learning. Strangers woke up with the same word on their lips. Doctors called it stress. Psychologists blamed shared media. But there was one problem. No one could explain how people described symbols that had never been recorded. Symbols later found carved into ruins older than written history. Then came the animals. Birds refusing to fly over certain regions. Dogs growling at empty forests. Whales beaching themselves beneath cloudless skies, their eyes wide, watching something above the water. Nature was reacting to something humanity could not see. And then, there was the silence. Entire villages reporting nights where sound simply vanished. No insects, no wind, no distant engines. Just a pressure in the air, like the world was holding its breath. Survivors all described the same feeling. Not fear, expectation. As if something ancient was listening for a response. The signs grew bolder. Archaeological sites long sealed began to collapse on their own, revealing chambers no one remembered digging. Inside them, no treasures. No bones. Only smooth stone floors, worn down by something pacing for centuries. Researchers noticed something else. Many of these sites aligned with modern cities, as if the gods had not been buried randomly, but placed where humanity would eventually gather, where belief would return. And then came the recordings. Audio files filled with low-frequency sounds not audible to human ears. Frequencies that triggered dread, nausea, and uncontrollable panic when played back. The sound had a rhythm, like breathing, like something massive, asleep, but dreaming. The final sign was the most disturbing. Children. Children began speaking names no adult had taught them, describing old watchers who stood in corners at night, drawing the same figures again and again across continents. When asked where they learned these things, they all gave the same answer. They told me. That was when the truth became impossible to ignore. The gods did not vanish. They withdrew. They watched. And now, they were testing whether humanity still remembered how to listen. There are places underground that were never meant to be opened. Not caves. Not tunnels. Chambers. They exist beneath layers of earth so old they predate mountains. Carved not by tools, but by instruction. The first discovery was an accident. A mining operation drilled deeper than permitted. Past safety limits, past geological sense. The drill hit nothing. No rock. No void. Just warmth. The temperature rose without explanation. Sensors failed, and the sound began. A slow, rhythmic vibration traveling up the metal shaft. Not mechanical, intentional. Like a heartbeat, measured, patient. When the chamber was breached, the workers expected gas. What they found instead was space. A perfectly smooth cavern, walls polished like bone. No cracks, no tool marks. And at the center, something bound. Not a body, a presence. The air felt heavy as if gravity had grown curious. Lights dimmed without losing power. And every person in that chamber felt the same sudden certainty. They were standing inside a god's prison. There were symbols etched into the floor. Not written to be read, but to be obeyed. Circular patterns meant to contain, not decorate. This god was not killed. It was sealed. Records found later spoke of an ancient bargain. The god beneath the earth fed on motion, on cities, on progress. The ancients learned that when humanity expanded too fast, the god stirred. Earthquakes, sinkholes, cities swallowed whole. So they buried it. And they did something worse than murder. They made it aware of time. Every century marked. Every delay intentional. Every passing generation another insult. The god learned patience. When the modern drilling began, the bindings weakened. Workers reported pressure behind their eyes. Memories that weren't theirs. Visions of continents folding inward. Then the disappearances started. No signs of struggle. No collapsed tunnels. Just helmets left neatly on the ground, facing the chamber. The final recording came from a camera dropped into the pit. It did not show a creature. It showed the stone floor slowly cracking. Not outward, but inward. As if the god was turning over in its sleep. Operations were shut down. The site sealed. Officially, it never existed. But seismic sensors still record something beneath that location. A pulse. Steady. Growing closer together. Like something counting down. The ancients did not bury every god. Some were too vast. Too deep. Too awake. So they learned another method. Appeasement. Along certain coastlines there are fishing towns that never appear on maps. Places where the sea is calm even during storms. And violent when offerings are late. The locals never speak about it directly. They don't need to. Every child is taught the same rule before they learn to swim. Never take more from the sea than you are willing to give back. Outsiders think it's superstition. They laugh at the carved poles facing the water. At the baskets lowered into the tide at night. At the boats that turn back for no visible reason. But fishermen know. Because the sea god still listens. It does not roar. It does not rise. It waits. When the offerings stop, the water changes first. It grows thick, heavy. As if each wave must think before it moves. Compasses spin. Engines fail in clear weather. And the horizon begins to feel closer. Survivors of these waters describe something beneath their boats. Not a shape. A shadow large enough to make the ocean feel shallow. The god does not kill quickly. That would waste the lesson. Instead, it returns things. Boats drift back empty. Scraped clean from the inside. Nets are pulled up tangled with bones that do not belong to fish. And sometimes, a person comes back. Those who return do not speak of what they saw below. They develop a fear of still water. They refuse to sleep near windows. And when they hear waves at night, they whisper apologies. There are records, quiet ones, of naval equipment detecting something moving beneath restricted waters. Something that predates the seafloor. Something that changes depth without displacement. The military classified it. The fishermen named it. They call it the listener below. Every few decades, when the sea grows restless, a town disappears. No wreckage. No survivors. Just foundations near the shore, facing the water, as if waiting. The god does not want worship. It wants acknowledgement. And it is patient enough to wait generations for a single payment. Forests were never meant to be safe. We pretend they are. Marking trails, building campsites, lighting fires. But deep woods existed long before maps. And something learned how to move within them without ever being seen. There are national parks where missing persons cases are quietly closed. Not solved. Closed. Hikers vanish within sight of marked paths. Campers lose hours of time without moving an inch. Search teams report equipment failures and the feeling of being followed. From every direction at once. The locals know why. They avoid certain groves where the trees lean inward, where moss grows thick on one side only, where birds go silent without warning. That is the hunting ground. The forest god does not roar or charge. Stalks. It understands sight. It only moves when unobserved. Cameras fail. Night vision glitches. Flashlights dim for no reason. And when you look back, it has changed position. Tree trunks bear scars that resemble claw marks, but they are too high, too deliberate. Ancient carvings found deep in the forest show figures offering themselves willingly. The god did not want bodies. It wanted pursuit. It feeds on fear and motion, on hearts racing through undergrowth, on the moment a human realizes they are no longer alone. Survivors speak of footsteps that mirror their own, breathing that matches their pace, a pressure behind them that never closes until they stop running. Those who stop are never found. Those who escape come back changed. They avoid trees. They cannot sleep without lights, and they swear the forest watches them from windows and reflections. Rangers report something worse. Sometimes, the forest expands. Trails shift overnight. Distances stretch. Maps become wrong, as if the god is making room. The ancient people understood this god could not be sealed or bargained with, so they did the only thing possible. They stayed out of its way. Modern humans forgot, and the forest remembered. Not all gods hunt flesh. Some hunt thought. Some feed on what you remember and what you forget. There is a god older than cities, older than temples, that survives not by offerings or fear, but by being remembered. It does not appear in dreams. It whispers in memory. It hides in old photographs, in names you cannot place, in the way a forgotten melody suddenly echoes in your mind. The ancients knew its danger. Every story told, every ritual passed down, was a thread in its cage, and they feared one thing above all: forgetting. Because memory is the god's sustenance. The moment a human forgets, it grows stronger. In the modern world, it thrives. People forget what they had for breakfast. They forget old friends. They forget entire languages, names, faces, histories. And the god feeds. Some survivors speak of diaries rewriting themselves. Pages filled with words they never wrote. Thoughts they never had. Memories that feel like someone else's. Children are the most vulnerable. They repeat words no adult has taught them. Draw symbols older than the oldest city. Describe beings that watched them since infancy. When adults dismiss it as imagination, the god grows bolder. It whispers in the pauses of conversation. It waits in the silences of libraries. It hides in the forgotten corners of your mind until a familiar face disappears, and you don't even notice. And then it speaks, not aloud, not in dreams, in the sudden certainty that something important has been lost, something you cannot remember losing. Those who hear it sometimes are changed. They cannot remember entire weeks. They repeat the same mistakes. They cannot trust their own thoughts, and yet they cannot stop thinking about it, because the god thrives on that. It is patient. It is silent, and it never leaves. Not all gods walk the earth. Not all gods dwell beneath the sea or in forests or in memory. Some watch from above, from the sky, from a place so distant that we call it empty. Yet it is not. Astronauts have seen it, or at least they've seen something that should not exist. Strange distortions in the upper atmosphere, lights that move against the wind, patterns in the stars that do not align with known constellations. They say it is asleep, but sleep for a god is not rest. Sleep for a god is waiting, a calculation of everything below. The sleeping sky god is immense, vast enough that continents might feel insignificant under its gaze. It does not intervene, not yet. It only listens and records and dreams. When satellites fail for no reason, when night skies flicker with unnatural color, when storms form without warning and fade without explanation, these are not anomalies. They are the stirrings of something above, marking its presence. Some of its dreams touch the earth. They twist reality subtly. People see shadows in places there should be none. Time feels wrong. Animals flee for no reason. Astronauts describe a sensation they cannot name. A pressure on the mind, a hum in the skull that resonates with thought. And the sky god remembers. It remembers every human who has ever looked up at the night and wondered. Every name whispered in fear or prayer. Every invention, every war, every act of defiance. Because the sky god collects patience like we collect air. And it waits for the moment it decides we are ready or unready. It does not care. We look at the stars and see beauty, but the god above sees dinner, or perhaps a lesson. And one day it will wake. When it does, the sky will not be empty, and we will understand the true meaning of silence. The question has haunted humans since the first temple fell. Why do the gods allow us to breathe, to speak, to build? Why do they watch silently, never striking immediately? The answer is not mercy. It is utility. The gods view humanity as more than prey. We are livestock, yes, but also tools, playthings, experiments. Every war, every plague, every invention, they study it all. Our suffering is measured. Our triumphs are noted. Our creativity, our folly, it feeds them. The sea god thrives on our offerings and fear. The forest god thrives on the chase. The god of memory thrives on forgetfulness and remembrance. The sky god thrives on patience, watching our civilizations rise and fall. And it is meticulous. The ancients understood this. They created rituals not to appease, but to structure us, to contain us, to make us useful. When we break those structures, the gods notice. They test boundaries. They experiment, sometimes with entire cities, sometimes with a single human mind. Technology, progress, curiosity, they are double-edged swords. Each new discovery brings risk. Each forgotten rule brings opportunity. But still they wait, because waiting is the most effective form of control. They allow us to exist, because we are ingredients in something much larger, a cosmic pattern we barely comprehend. And the most terrifying truth? We are not the architects of our fate. We are observers, pawns, and occasionally, the entertainment. Every midnight thought, every whisper in the dark, every time you look at the world and feel unease, they are there, watching, measuring, waiting. And when the time comes, we will be ready or we will be gone. The final truth is not that the ancient gods are alive. It is worse than that. They have always been alive. What humanity calls history is simply the record of moments when the gods looked away, and moments when they did not. We mistake their silence for absence. But silence is how predators listen. The gods did not retreat because they were weak. They retreated because they had learned something about us. That we multiply, that we forget, that we repeat. We are a renewable resource. Civilizations rise like offerings. They collapse like meals finished. And the gods remain unchanged. Religion was never meant to save us. It was a containment system, a way to give the gods structure, and to give humanity rules that delayed attention. When belief fractured, the system failed. That is why the signs are returning. The dreams, the sounds, the watchers in the dark. The gods are not waking up. They are checking in. Midnight is not a time. It is a window. A moment when the noise of humanity quiets enough for them to hear individual thoughts, individual fears, individual names. If you listen to this story at night, that was not an accident. You were quiet enough. The gods do not demand worship anymore. They demand awareness. And now you are aware. So here is the final truth. The one the ancients buried deeper than any god. Once a god knows you exist, it never forgets.